Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather & Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I am your host. I am so happy that you decided to spend some of your time with me today. And as always, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make that investment of your time worth your while. Now, today we're going to explore a topic that we don't get into very often on the show here, but I think it could be really useful for the many, many, many of you in our audience who do the bulk of your work from your kitchen table, your home office, maybe even from the couch, or dare I say, from the bed. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about how to be effective in working anywhere that is not a traditional office. And to help us with that, I have enlisted my friend Ryan Kramer, who manages the remote work culture at GroupCollect. Ryan has a lot of experience with this topic, and he's going to share how he works from home without losing his mind. He's going to give you tips for how to hire work from anywhere employees that do a great job, and share some insights about how to build a strong culture across distributed teams. It's a really fascinating conversation. You are definitely going to want to hear this one. First, though, let's start with some travel news you may have missed. American Cruise Lines will grow by 6 more ships in the coming years. The domestic cruise company announced it is adding 6 new ships in 2027 and 2028, bringing the total fleet size to 30 vessels. 2 coastal ships, the American Mariner and American Navigator, and 1 river ship, the American Anthem, will launch in 2027. In 2028, 3 river ships, 1 named American Grace, and 2 unnamed vessels will join the ACL fleet. The Mariner and Navigator, both of which will be Patriot-class vessels, will sail the East Coast. They will be equipped with multiple lounges, a walking track, and private balconies. Each is being designed to accommodate up to 130 passengers. The Anthem, Grace, and unnamed river ships will sail locations like the Great Lakes, the Arkansas River, the Columbia River, and the Snake River. These ships will accommodate up to 180 passengers each and will include the new 1,000 square foot signature suites. Well, now it's time for the road tip segment of our show. This is the part of every episode where we dig deep into our bag of knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips to make your next trip less stressful and more successful. I was at a tourism event last week, and we were scheduled to be doing a lot of touring in a major city. And wouldn't you know, the weather just would not cooperate. It rained just about from the time I landed in town until I hit the airport to fly home a couple of days later. There was so much rain, and I was afraid that either the sightseeing may get canceled or I may get really, really wet. Well, fortunately, the organizers of that event came prepared, and they had really big, really nice umbrellas ready for everyone who attended. They must have had about 100 umbrellas to hand out when we started the sightseeing. And those umbrellas made it possible for us to keep our itinerary, to still visit the really incredible sites that we had all come to see, and to have a good time doing it and not be miserable and wet and cold and trying to avoid the rain. And it got me to thinking, how many times have I been on a trip, or have you been on a trip, and the weather wasn't cooperating and you or your travelers could have benefited from having an umbrella to keep you dry as you go? Now, listen, I know you tell your people how to pack for your trips. I know you remind people in your group to pack umbrellas, especially if you're expecting rain during a trip. I also know many of them simply don't do it. Call it optimistic thinking, call it poor planning, call it what you want, but there will always be a contingent, maybe a sizable contingent of people on your trips who show up without umbrellas or other rain gear when they really need it. And the truth is, you can't always modify your itinerary to keep your travelers out of the rain. So what I want to suggest is that maybe you could take a cue from the organizers of the event I was at last week, and come prepared for bad weather with a bunch of promotional umbrellas that have your company logo on them. Now, this may sound expensive to you. I actually did some research. I was surprised to find that you can get some individually sized umbrellas with your logo for as little as $5 each from online vendors, depending on the quantity. That's buying in big quantities. You can get prices as low as $5. If you're buying in quantities of like 10 to 15 to 20, you can still get them for as little as $7. Now, are these going to be high quality umbrellas? Probably not. But will they get your people through a day or two in the rain? Probably so. And you don't need a lot of umbrellas because hopefully some people in your group will have done the right thing and brought their own. But you can also ask people to share umbrellas, especially if they're traveling together. So if you have 50 people in a group, you don't need to have 50 umbrellas with you. You could probably get away with 20 or 25. So what I suggest you do is make an investment in some branded umbrellas and keep them in your office in a box in a closet somewhere. You don't need to bring them on every trip, but if you are heading out on a trip and the weather is looking dodgy, put that box with you on the motor coach. You could even check it as luggage to wherever you're flying to if you need to. And then use those umbrellas as loaners for people who need them when it's rainy. If you're feeling particularly generous, you could even let people keep them. If you let people keep those umbrellas, hopefully they're going to take them home and use them after the trip. It's very cheap marketing for you. It also builds goodwill among your customers, and it establishes you as the kind of well-prepared travel planner that your customers and people like them want to trust and spend their hard-earned dollars traveling with. Now, if this all sounds like too much trouble, if you don't have the cash for promotional umbrellas or you're afraid it's just going to take up space you don't have, a good alternative would be to get a box of ponchos. Ponchos cost just a few cents each. And of course, nobody's going to keep those and take them home, but they can really get you out of a jam if the weather just doesn't cooperate. Whatever you do, I encourage you to be the travel planner who comes prepared even when your customers don't. Bring those umbrellas, bring those ponchos, do what you can to keep people dry, and keep to the itinerary that you worked so hard to plan. That is your road tip of the week. Now, before we move on, I want to take a minute and share just a little bit of news from us. Our staff here at the Group Travel Leader, we do our best to attend as many industry events as we can around the country and places throughout North America. It's one of our favorite parts of the job. Number one, because, well, let's face it, we love travel. Number two, because we love meeting you. So I want to bring you up to date on some of the places that you can meet us in person around the country over the coming season. Now, this week, our team is going to be attending the Kentucky Travel Industry Association Fall Meet in Louisville. So if you are headed there and hear this before you go, then please come find us at our booth. Ashley DeLucia and I will also be at the NTA Travel Exchange November 9th through 12th. That's next week, believe it or not, in Ottawa, Canada. Now, later on in December, I'm going to be attending the United States Tour Operators Association Annual Conference and Marketplace. I'll be there December 2nd through 4th in National Harbor, Maryland, just outside of D.C. And then after the first of the year, we will be at the American Bus Association Marketplace in Reno, Nevada. That's taking place January 11 through 13. And then just a week or so later, I'm going to be speaking at the Louisiana Tourism Sales and Marketing Seminar in Baton Rouge. Can't wait to reconnect with my Louisiana friends there. That will be January 20th through 21st. Wherever you are, if you are planning to attend any of these events, please, please, please come find us. Look for the Group Travel Leader booth at most of these conferences. We would love to meet you. We would love to hear where you're going, what kinds of trips you're doing, what is selling well, what your pain points are. We would love to help figure out how we can serve you better. And if you work in the travel industry for a destination, an attraction, a hotel, or something like that, we would love to meet you as well and can't wait to do that in the coming weeks. Well, now it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Ryan Kramer. As we do that, let me remind you, you can find a wrap-up of some of the most important things that Ryan had to say in the show notes for this episode. Show notes, of course, are the text that appears below the audio player anywhere that you are listening to this podcast. And you can also find show notes for every single episode we have ever done on our website at grouptravelleader.com/podcast. I'll also be back after the interview to recap some of the most important things Ryan had to say and give you my thoughts on them. And then I hope you'll stick around through that recap, because when we're done there, I'm going to ask the question, can tourism count on the federal government anymore? That's going to be the topic of today's Hot Minute. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Ryan Kramer. All right, everybody. My guest today is a tour technology guru who got his start in the travel industry as the marching band manager for the University of Massachusetts. After college, he worked for a major tour company in the Midwest before the pandemic sent him on a career detour into the fields of biotech and health insurance. Today, he's back at home in tourism as the director of product management at GroupCollect, where he works with a team of colleagues across the country to create software solutions for tour companies. Ryan Kramer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
I am so excited to have you here, Ryan. I love your origin story of how you got into travel. So before we talk all things work from home productivity, I would love for you to share with our audience what happened on that marching band trip that made you say, I got to spend the rest of my life doing this kind of work.
So that obsession really started over the summer when we were working with this tour company that I've ultimately wound up working with and working with the team there. And I was just finding it so gratifying, so fulfilling, putting together flight manifests, hotel rooms. Like maybe it's something odd about me, but I just found that all exhilarating, and watching the itinerary come together, seeing the deadlines, when we needed to know what, collecting answers. And it dawned on me all at once, this does not have to be the one time in my life I do this. There is an entire team here who's doing this. So I boldly went up to one of the leaders of the company who was with us on the trip and said, can I come work for you someday? And less than a year later, I found myself sitting in that office for that company where I happily worked.
You know, I've asked a lot of people about their tourism origin stories, and many of them come from, I went to the Grand Canyon, I was in Paris, I was in Peru, and I got inspired. You may be the first person who led with Flight Manifest.
Oh, yeah.
But hey, we need those kind of like operational minds in tourism to keep the rest of us, you know, like flighty, you know, travel adventure lovers on the right page. So, so that's wonderful. All right. So you got into travel. What kind of work were you doing for the tour company?
I was the international travel coordinator. So in addition to working with groups on, working with the sales team on fulfilling the itineraries that they were providing to groups, I also, with the international job, get to have this kind of broad view over myriad aspects of the process, like working with our foreign exchange vendor, working with some of the receptive operators who we engaged overseas. Working with different companies, it's much different animal, sending an orchestra from Boston to Dublin than it is sending an orchestra from Boston to DC. Not saying one's better or harder than the other, but just kind of a different animal altogether. Yeah. In addition to making sure that I was reading State Department briefings on where we were sending people, it just gave me this broad view, and also was the liaison with our travel insurance provider, which is where I met a certain character in the group travel industry that some people might be familiar with.
Somebody who became pretty important in your life today,
Someone who is my boss today, yes.
Yeah, excellent. His name is Bud Geisler. For those of you that don't know him, he is a longtime tourism pro, an absolute character. If you ever get a chance to spend 10 minutes with Bud, it's going to be 10 minutes well spent. You're going to be laughing, if nothing else, for sure. So, as happened to many tourism professionals in the pandemic, companies went on pause, things froze, people had to go find different things to do, at least for a period of time. Tell us a quick overview of what you did during those years and how you found your way back into tourism from other industries that many people would say, maybe were more promising.
Sure, absolutely. So when the need to find a job became evident late in 2020, I did what so many people do. I sent my resume to a staffing agency. My recruiter said, "Hey, I've got this 6 month, I think it was even 4 month. It was a pretty short contract, a temporary gig with a big biotech firm in Boston. They just need some pencil pushers to be there. But you know what? The money was okay. It was what I needed. It was a company based in Boston. And at that time, we thought, eventually everything's going to go back to the office. So I like the prospect of being closer to home. That's where I'm from originally. It's where I am now. So took this opportunity, and at the risk of going on too long, the short version of the story is I actually stayed with that company for 2.5 years, got brought on full time, got to help with leading some of the programs that they were doing there in response to COVID. So I have the unfortunate situation of I am someone who both lost a job because COVID started and because COVID ended. I am very luckily sandwiched in between there. But after that, had a short stint in the health insurance industry, worked with some really great people, learned a ton, but just kind of started looking at the road ahead of me. Was cresting up on my 30s at the time and thinking, what do I want to do in the long term? And even though I found people who I loved working with and work that I found fulfilling, I had not felt this kind of baseline joy of what the group travel industry had to offer. So, it was almost like one day my soul left my body and I started dialing up Bud Geisler. And, just seeing if he had any leads in the industry. And I cannot say how lucky I am that, as a matter of fact, he did. And that's where I am now.
Yeah. Fantastic. So in that interim, between losing 2 jobs because of COVID, in that interim, you started working at home like everybody in, sort of knowledge class jobs was working at home. And you kind of have never really stopped since then. So what was that experience like becoming a remote employee like the rest of the world? And then what about it made you say, I think I can do this, as opposed to all the people who were like, I'm dying to get back to an office somewhere?
Absolutely. So yeah, it was definitely a paradigm shift because, at my former company in the travel industry, when we were working at home on an emergency basis, that was one thing, but it was temporary, and we very safely, wound up reopening the office. So truly had never worked at home for an extended amount of time. Then when I take this job that at the time I think is temporary, I think to myself, okay, how can I do this? And I can tell you, Brian, I struggled at first with it, especially coming into a brand new company. Because when we were temporarily working at home at my company before that, I knew everyone already. I had relationships and friendships. We did virtual happy hour, things like this. Now I have this team that I'm on, and these responsibilities and these procedures. And I do not have the benefit of turning to the person beside me and asking for help. I do not have the benefit of water cooler banter. I do not have the benefit of, hey, you might be having a rough day, but the clock will strike 5 and I'll head out to the parking lot, hop in my car. And, I love the show Severance, the Severance chip will flip and, I go back home. So I think that it was tough at first. And the hardest part for me, and I'm not trying to say this for the sake of like, oh, what a goody two shoes, but the hardest part of it for me was knowing when to stop,
Mm,
knowing when it was acceptable to walk away from the desk. Because again, to
mm,
use that severance analogy again, all of a sudden I'm reintegrated. All of a sudden my home and my work are all in the same place. And that felt daunting. So, what I wound up doing was speaking with my boss at the time and just kind of expressing how that was difficult for me. And I was not the only one who was expressing this. They had hired a bunch of people who were around my age, kind of at my point in the career. And we were all similarly finding it challenging. So, what we did was we started to put a real emphasis based on this feedback on creating not this remote work environment, but truly a virtual office,
mm.
an environment where you can call someone into a huddle on Slack the same way you would walk by their cubicle. We would have time where we would virtually go to the water cooler together. And long story short, like some of my best friends to this day are people who I met working at that job where we were all remote. Like, suffice it to say, we got our rhythm down.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. So there are a couple things there. Number one, a lot of companies tried to create some kind of quote unquote culture in that remote environment. I think a lot of them failed. Now, granted, there was so much else going on in the world and so much trauma and worry and fear that maybe it was an unrealistic set of expectations. But it sounds like you were with a group of people that actually succeeded in creating that culture that is not only functional and collaborative and efficient, but also fostering relationships and making you like your coworkers and be excited to be there. So what were you or your leaders doing there that worked when other people were trying and failing at that same thing?
I think that one change that my boss implemented when the feedback started coming in was we set up guardrails around when the virtual office opened and the virtual office closed. Now, just
Mm,
like when you work in a regular office, if you want to stay late or come in early, you've got the ability to do that. But there was a time the virtual office opened and a time that it closed. So setting up that boundary was one thing. And
mm,
then starting to put that emphasis on the recognition that I challenge anyone listening here who works in an office, are you truly doing tasks, activities directly associated with your work for an 8 full hours?
mm,
You're not. That's not possible. That's not human nature.
right.
And I think that recognition that some of that value comes in that camaraderie. That's how you fill some of that interstitial time where you cannot be, doing stuff because your brain needs a break or because there's a distraction. Just trying to integrate that, but virtually,
Mm,
cameras on culture. Sort of a thing there. Like if we're going to be virtual, great, but the ability to let's look each other in the eye, let's talk, let's get to know each other. That dog of yours who's running around, let's see them pop up.
yeah. Yeah.
That's because I think there was the companies who failed. I think lost sight of the fact that it is possible to build that camaraderie. I think what
Mm,
oftentimes happened is they discounted that could happen and they quickly knee jerk reaction. Nope, this can only happen in the office. And they gave.
mm,
But let me tell you something about this team that I was working with there, Brian,
yeah.
is we were all over the country and all over the world. And we grew and grew and grew, during my time there. And we were able to get the best candidate for any job
Mm,
anywhere in the world. They did not have to be in our geographic footprint, which in turn, not only do you get the best candidate, you start making friends all over the world. Your
yeah.
community grows larger and larger. I'm talking to people overseas who are now becoming people who I see every day. It's not only smart from a business point of view, getting that talent acquisition anywhere, but you can actually turn what some people think is inherently this very isolating situation into this very enriching and world expanding prospect
Mm.
for your employees.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of our listeners are tourism entrepreneurs, the sorts of people that you interact with at GroupCollect every day. Many tourism entrepreneurs work at home out of necessity, right? Tourism is a lean business. Startups, thankfully, don't require a lot of overhead, a lot of capital. You don't need to have a facility, and so you work at the kitchen table or the desk in the basement. What are some of the ways that folks like that who are in that solopreneur phase that don't have a team built in to the work experience, what are some of the ways that they can deal with maybe the social isolation that can come with being in the house for long stretches? The the temptation to maybe not shower as often as you should, to eat junk. How do you make sure this is a good experience when you don't have that team of a couple dozen people around the world that you can have fascinating virtual water coolers with?
I'm so glad that you asked. So, something that's the case now and kind of became the case throughout, my early working from home career, that was not the case when I started, is we can now safely leave the house and go be part of our local communities. I proudly teach vinyasa yoga 6 times a week outside of my work at GroupCollect and build community there. I'm a proud Orange Theory member. I have a community there. I go to visit my family. I go to visit my friends. I engage with my local culture because I think it is important to stay rooted in your community. Even if you have that's something important. And I'll give Bud Geisler another shout out here. What a great example of someone who has a team all over the world, but has stayed very rooted in his local community. You hear the guy talk about Pittsburgh, no question there.
Yeah.
But so that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is to those folks who are listening, who are in that solopreneur phase. We are so lucky. And part of what I missed about our industry is, Brian, our industry shows are kind of the best, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Use the time to get to know other people in the industry, see what's going on, build your community from within the industry, because I do think that our industry is pretty singular in the way that we support each other. And I think, especially to the listeners of this show, you can really leverage that if you're feeling that isolation a bit.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you made a reference a minute ago to the benefit of being able to hire talent from all over, hire the best person in the country for your opening rather than, whoever is limited to your geographic area.
Mm-hmm.
To that, the tourism entrepreneur that's ready to maybe make their first or second hire, or their hires in the past have been local, or they've been friends from church, or, your brother's nephew, or, well, I guess your brother's nephew is also your nephew, but you know what I'm saying? It can seem intimidating to be like, okay, well, but where do I start finding that person? Especially when I don't get to interview them in the office first, especially when I don't get to see them every day. Do you have any tips for beginning to build out that distributed team for someone who hasn't done it before and isn't sure where to start?
Well, let me tell you this, Brian. I'll caveat this by saying, I am not a recruitment expert, or an HR expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm happy to share with you how I would approach that if I were in that situation. And I think that, I don't know about you, but advice that I give to younger folks who ask me about looking for a job, and that I know a lot of people do, because it's advice that was given to me, I still get given to me, when I've been out of work. This has been given to me, is you're not going to get very far just tossing your application on Easy Apply on LinkedIn or Indeed or any of these sites here. That's a good way to just scream into the void. And I think as employers, there needs to be a recognition that that's kind of the case on the other end as well. You get a lot of noise there. So I would not start there. I would start with a LinkedIn post targeted at your industry peers, saying, I am looking for the best executive assistant in the United States of America. Who do you all know?
Yeah.
And going from there, especially with a remote situation. People, the generation kind of below me right now is going through pains to build their networks out because they realize these limitations of these digital job searching tools. So I
Yeah.
think that as employers, you can reap the benefit of that work that's being put in because people will reach out. I tag people into job postings all the time. I reach out, I ask. Like, I think that we as, organizations need to start giving ourselves that same advice that you might give your nephew if they asked you career advice.
Yeah. Or your brother's nephew.
Or your brother's nephew, which very well could be your son.
That's true. Oh man, I'm just failing at the family tree test today.
All good, all good. If that's the case with me, it is a dog. So that is all good.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs in our space who got their start in the 20th century. Many of those folks are just inherently, viscerally react against any idea like this and say, there's no way to keep remote employees on track. There's no way that anybody puts in a full day of work when they're at their house. There's no way. There's no way. Tell me what you have seen in working with remote teams at 3 different organizations. Tell me how many slackers you have met that have been abusing the work from home situation and how they got away with it.
I was about to do the thing where I ball up my fist as if to indicate 0. Then I remembered we were on an audio medium here. So I will say 0. And I'm reminded of a great story that I've heard. So one of my favorite shows of all time is The Office. Mm-hmm. So when Ricky Gervais was creating The Office, he brought the pitch to an executive at the BBC. He goes into their office and the executive says, Ricky, I like this idea for the show, but I don't know if people will buy that there is an office where everyone is being so unproductive. And Ricky said, get up, stand up. Let's take a walk around the office here at the BBC. And it's true story. And by the time the executive came back and was really paying attention to it, we know how it went. The show is now a huge success. So
yeah.
I think that if you put that emphasis on finding the people the people who your network is going to recommend, they're not trying to rip you off. They're not trying to rip you off. And I hate to tell you, you have just as much risk having someone in the office. And remote work allows us to look at an employee's contributions in terms of output and in terms of value add in a way that the waters can get muddied in the office where you conflate presence with output.
Yeah. Presence and productivity are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's really good. So you take a really active role at GroupCollect in helping to foster that positive culture with employees who are literally all over the place. Tell us about some of the ways that you do that to make sure people are seen, heard, recognized, engaged, and building genuine relationship with each other.
Absolutely. So I would say kind of the cornerstone of our what you're talking about there, this kind of employee recognition there is we've built a little Slack extension called the Kudos bot. And it's very simple. It's a command that you run in Slack where you enter the name of someone who's done something great that deserves recognition. You put a little blurb about that. That gets broadcast out to the whole company. And at our monthly all hands meeting, everyone who received recognition throughout the month is entered on a wheel. And we spin the wheel and the lucky winner gets a $100 gift card. Nice simple way to do things. And that doesn't, besides the cost of the gift card, cost us anything.
Yeah. You're also a big believer in a daily meeting, right? Tell us what those look like and why they're important.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, I'm not talking entire company meeting every day. This depends. But I think that, managers and reports, team members collaborating on projects, it's a controversial opinion, but I love the daily stand-up. I think that it helps fill that gap that gets left when we can't just putter around to each other's cubicles. It lets us see each other. It lets us get caught up. I think your bond with your coworkers becomes so much stronger if you understand what's kind of going on outside of their Zoom window. And that daily time gives you that ability to do so, in addition to the very pragmatic pieces about just you can't look over and see what someone is working on, and a chance to say, this is, if you were to look at my external monitor, this is what I'm working on today. So like I said, somewhat of a controversial opinion. I'm a big daily meeting proponent.
We're all about the hot takes here.
Yeah,
No.
sure.
Now, a couple times a year, I think any remote team could really benefit from spending some actual physical time together. In tourism, we have some built-in opportunities to do that. Of course, there's the big trade shows. Maybe you've got a tour you're operating and you have a couple team members come on it. But for people who, maybe aren't going to be at those big events or who need some other time where they're not distracted by the conference or the tour, what are your recommendations? What have you seen work really well for that all team or the executive team or, whatever it is, get together in person? What are the best practices?
I think keep it short is one thing. Stay intentional about your agenda. Leave time to talk about what you need to talk about, but emphasize, I think anyone listening here can relate. There are those ministerial tasks that we all have to do any day, just being a member of society. When you're on a remote team, those can be done when you're in the home office. Think about what is really the hardest to cultivate type of situation when you have those together times. For me, often, I find that it's the brainstorms. The laptops are closed. You have the whiteboard or the big white sheets of paper out, and you write down ideas.
Yeah.
And another hot take here is the number one goal of these retreats, these get-togethers, should not be productivity. It should be reigniting excitement for what it is that you do. Use that time to share some stories about how your service, your product, something that you put out into the world, made the world better for someone. Think of it as your opportunity to kind of fill your team's happiness cup up a couple of times a year.
And filling that cup up, is it mostly socializing and having some heart-to-hearts and a team building exercise, or can you fill that cup up in a way that also is related to the mission of what you're doing?
I think you can have a little bit of both. I think that you can have the kind of, archetypal trust falls kind of things if your team's that. But no, I think that there's also plenty of opportunities to keep it mission focused. Like I said, sharing customer stories is a great way to do that. Going around and sharing personal wins, personal struggles, taking the pragmatic piece of it out and just going into the how did things feel, that can keep it all focused. So I think there's a little bit of room for everything, but I would say allocate some time to not talk shop and to just get to know each other better.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great tips there. I know you shared your email address earlier, but for anybody that wants to learn more about you, about the GroupCollect solutions, or pick your brain about how they can be a better remote worker, what are the ways that they can learn about you, get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So Ryan at GroupCollect.com. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Just look for Ryan Kramer. You'll see GroupCollect underneath there. And yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't say we've got a lot of exciting things happening here at GroupCollect, and a lot of tools that, I dare say for some of our listeners may make having some remote work more practical because of what we're able to accomplish digitally that we might have not been able to before. I urge you can reach out to me. I'd be happy to get you connected with all the right people, or there are interest forms and just great additional information about all of our products over at GroupCollect.com.
Yeah, fantastic. We will link to all those resources in the show notes. Before I let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So no pressure, just whatever comes to mind. When you book travel, do you choose a window seat or an aisle seat?
Aisle seat.
Yeah, what's that about?
I like to be able to get up and move, which is a big reason why I generally prefer train travel to plane travel. The ability to get moving there.
Yeah.
That's the reason why.
Well, that's a big benefit of the Northeast is you're so connected by rail in ways that other parts of the country aren't. So yeah, kudos on taking advantage of that. What is one thing in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
I would not travel without my white noise machine, because whenever I get to a hotel room, you have the issue of you have that loud air conditioner that goes for a big part of the night and then goes quiet. That freaks me out. I need the white noise machine to just get a steady kind of drum beat and drown that out.
Yeah, hey, whatever it takes to sleep well in a hotel.
Mhm.
That's key for sure. If you had a free airline pass, or we can make it an Amtrak pass or a Eurail pass, you choose. If you had that free pass in a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
I would be heading to Tokyo.
Yeah.
I am a people are going to judge me hard for this answer. I'm a big Disney adult. If you're watching any video clips of this year, you see Disney memorabilia all over here. And as a theme park nerd, some of the best theme parks in the world are there in Tokyo and down in Osaka, not just Disney and Universal, but some of the other smaller outfits that they have there. Plus, of course, if I had that entire week, I would get out, explore the city, sample some of the local food, see the local culture. So being able to have that cultural experience tied in with that nerdy experience, plus as a airplane nerd, being able to fly on ostensibly a big airplane makes me excited.
That is exciting. If you take that trip, let me know. I might just join you. I am dying to get to Japan. So that's awesome. Last question. What is one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Ooh, what a loaded question. Um, I think that I'll give a shout out to our friends down in Savannah who hosted a fantastic conference for us just a few weeks ago when we took that river cruise up and down the river there, and it was that beautiful sunset. I'd love to take my wife or family or other loved one. I don't think they allow dogs on there, but and have that experience again. I thought it was beautiful, but I was really happy to get to spend that evening with our fantastic industry colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on that cruise a number of times, and it just never gets old. The views and the sunset and the music and the food. It's a wonderful time. So I totally hear you, Ryan. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and lending us your knowledge. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ryan Kramer as much as I did. And I want to take a minute to go over some of the real key takeaways that I had from that conversation to make sure you don't miss some of these tips that I think are going to be very helpful to you, whether you work from home as a team of one on your own, or you have remote employees around the country, or even employees who are on the road representing your organization on a frequent basis. So when I asked Ryan about how he first learned to create a healthy remote work culture, he talked about a previous employer and he said, "We set up guardrails around when the virtual office opened and the virtual office closed." He went on to say, "It's a cameras on culture. If we're going to be virtual, great, but let's talk. Let's look each other in the eye." The companies that failed, I think, lost sight of the fact that it is possible to build that camaraderie. They discounted that could happen and said, this could only happen in the office, and they gave up. Well, that's a controversial take there from Ryan. I tend to think that he is on to something here. Truth is, there are just too many companies in the country and around the world who have found a way to be successful with a remote work strategy. And I think that has to do with intentionality. If the culture in your company is based on water cooler chatter, if it's based on everybody showing up at a certain time, that's going to be hard to replicate online. It's not going to replicate itself online unless you do a lot of work to make it happen. If you are building a company culture from the ground up, though, and you started remote and intend to stay remote, then you have the advantage of being able to build these things into the culture from day one. Cameras on culture. I love this. We are looking at each other every time we talk. It's not a phone call. We're not multitasking. We're not doing other things. We're not slouching around. We're looking at each other. We're fully present. We give each other our attention. I think that goes a long way to creating that camaraderie that Ryan's talking about. Now, when I asked Ryan if he has found that people are productive when working from home, he said, If you put an emphasis on hiring the right people, they're not trying to rip you off. I hate to tell you, you have just as much risk of having someone in the office. Remote work allows us to look at an employee's contribution in terms of output and value add. The waters can get muddied in the office where you conflate presence with output. I think Ryan is absolutely right here. There are certainly fields of work where you simply have to be in one physical location to do it. Think of a hospital, think of a firefighter, think of a university administrator. But that is much less true for those of us in the travel industry. And while it can be fun to work with people in an office, I think it is a big risk that we do conflate seeing people's faces with assuming that they are doing the jobs we have hired them to do. The truth is, no matter where your people work, whether you are in office, at home, distributed around the world, you need to be judging employees' contributions in terms of output and value add. So if someone's always on time, if they make great water cooler banter, but they are not producing the goods for your company, you may not be getting the returns you think you are on that in-office culture. And finally, when I asked Ryan about his approach to all team meetings, he said, you need to leave time to talk about what you need to talk about, but think about what is really the hardest to cultivate. He said, I find it's the brainstorms. The laptops are closed, but you have the whiteboards out and you write down ideas. He said the number one goal of these retreats should not be productivity. It should be reigniting excitement about what you do. Think of it as your opportunity to fill your team's happiness cup up. Again, I agree with Ryan wholeheartedly here. Remote teams need opportunities to be together. And if you travel together on trips, if you attend tourism conferences or things like that, some of those opportunities might be built in, or you might have to intentionally create those opportunities through retreats, through strategic visits. It's up to you to do that, but you also need to be clear about the purpose of those visits. The truth is, you're not going to get as much done on the road, and your employees are not going to get as much done in a new setting as they will at their desks where they have maximized the environment for productivity. So rather than trying to make those offsites or those all-team meetings highly productive occasions, instead, focus on making them highly connective occasions where you can brainstorm, where you can build relationships, where you can get excited about the work that you collaborate on. And that way, when people go back home, they're not only productive, but they are also motivated, and you get a great return on that time you spent together in person. Great ideas there from Ryan Kramer. Well, it's been weeks, and unfortunately, we are still talking about government shutdowns here in the U.S. But government shutdowns aren't the only ways that government decisions impact us here in tourism. In fact, government decisions have a big impact on the tourism industry and by extension on the work that most of us do. And as I ponder the situation that we are in today, I found myself asking, can we really trust that the federal government is going to do right by tourism anymore? Well, that question is the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the show where I take 60 seconds to give you my unfiltered thoughts on an issue that impacts tourism every day. And today, we're asking the question, can tourism count on the federal government anymore? So let's put 60 seconds on the clock and get into it. The last two trips I have been on have both been disrupted because sites we planned to visit were closed due to the federal government shutdown. But even if the government reopens soon, we can't take federal funding for granted. The recent gutting of Brand USA is proof of that. And this trend isn't limited only to the United States. The Jordan Tourism Board is closing its North American office, despite massive success in bringing millions of American travelers to Jordan. This is all disappointing news, but there is a lesson here. At the end of the day, nobody else is going to do the work of tourism marketing for us. And none of us can reasonably expect that somebody else will pay for it. So if a place or an experience is important to you, now is the time to get busy figuring out how to promote it, how to operate it, and how to fund it on your own. Well, that's the Hot Minute. That's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you are welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And hey, whether you agree or disagree, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, questions, or the intricate details of your marketing budget to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that address. I really do love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your ideas may just be the topic of the next Hot Minute. And while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? And if you haven't already subscribed to the show, then do that now. And while you're there, if you could leave us a rating and give us a review, that would be a huge help. I'm so thankful to everyone who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Ryan Kramer for joining us today. On the next episode, I'm going to bring you a conversation with Lou Myers and Omneya Fahmy of the ABA Foundation. We're going to talk about measuring the size of the group tour market. Hint for you, it is much bigger than you probably think. That's a really encouraging conversation. I can't wait to share that one with you. In the meantime, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we are all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Schul. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Our creative team includes Danya Simmons, Ashley Ricks, and Rachel Crick. Our sales team is Talisa Reck and Ashley DeLucia. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information on our podcast, magazines, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com.